Joining us now from Washington is Alec Ross, Senior Advisor for Innovation for Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Welcome to Bloomberg West, Alec. First of all, I'd like you to explain this concept of digital diplomacy and what it means to Secretary Clinton.
Sure. So, you don't think about government necessarily as being the most technology savvy place in the world, but I'll tell you what, Hillary Clinton has brought some serious technology mojo to the conduct of America's foreign policy. Everything from creating an entire human rights agenda around internet freedom to creating encrypted crime reporting programs in Ciudad Juarez to a number of other breakthrough innovations, some of which you may have heard of, like the Text Haiti program that we came up with, which raised about $35 million in 2 weeks for earthquake relief in Haiti. So what we're trying to do is recognize that one of America's greatest assets are our technologists, are our innovators, and put them to work in service of our foreign policy goals.
Now, is it really that quote-unquote diplomatic? Are you reaching out to governments, or are you reaching out to individuals under governments that the United States doesn't necessarily agree with?
Well, it's both. I mean, listen, the single most important thing that white shirt, red tie diplomats like myself can do is the formal interactions between sovereign governments. We sit across the table with other diplomats, with foreign ministers, with prime ministers, and we negotiate with those governments. But look, we live in a truly networked world, and living in a networked world means that you can't just engage government to government. So we do a variety of different things to connect with people, and this can be government-to-people communications among our allies, or it can be government-to-people communications in places where they don't necessarily like us that much. Through my own Twitter account at Alec J. Ross, I probably communicate with 40 or 50,000 people in Syria and Iran alone.
In Egypt, Libya, and Syria, we've seen citizens not just use technology to propel revolutions, but governments use technology to thwart them. How has that impacted the State Department's digital strategy?
Yeah, so look, that's a really important question. It's important to not be utopian about this technology. You can't just sprinkle the internet on a problem. We all grow up to be happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. It isn't democracy juice. These tools are, as Hillary Clinton said, like nuclear power. It can be used to fuel a city or destroy a city. So on the one hand, citizens are able to use social media and digital tools to absolutely knock the teeth out of dictatorships, like they did in Tunisia and like they did in Egypt. But look, you also have to look at what took place in Iran and what the Syrian government is trying to do right now, which is infiltrate the networks, surveil their citizens, manipulate the content that's there, figure out who's organizing, and arrest them. Now, I think that if you look at the recent history, part of what you'll see is that these networks, these technologies, favor dissidents over dictators, but you got to be clear-eyed about it.
The State Department is spending some $20 million to promote internet freedom in countries like China and Iran. But in those countries where censorship doesn't seem to be getting better but worse, how much progress do you really expect to make? So we just spent about $28 million a couple weeks ago to help develop technologies and, importantly, provide trainings to help people stay safe online while they do work around government censorship. If you look at what's happened just over the last 6 months in countries like Tunisia that severely censored the internet, or in Syria, which censors the internet, part of what you can see is that citizens tend, frankly, to be more savvy than governments in working around censors. Now, this isn't always the case. The Chinese government, for example, is dedicating billions of dollars of investment to censorship. But what I believe is that the world is growing more connected, and that to the extent that governments are trying to throttle back their citizens' ability to communicate and engage online, they're working against the tide of history. So sure, you can spend all kinds of money and put all kinds of resources into your policing systems, but at the end of the day, these networks and these technologies tilt toward openness. I want to talk a little bit about the relationship between Washington and Silicon Valley. You've personally helped connect tech heavyweights like Eric Schmidt and Jack Dorsey with Secretary Clinton. What do you do on a regular basis to liaise with Silicon Valley and the private technology companies here?
Look, I think that Silicon Valley and the private technology companies in America, these are some of our best resources. And if we are going to build an increasingly technology-rich, knowledge-based economy, we ought to talk to people like that. And you know, people like Eric Schmidt and Jack Dorsey tend to get the column inches. They tend to get a lot of the press attention. But I also think it's really important for us to look at earlier stage companies, some really cutting edge entrepreneurs whose names we may not recognize, and give them access to the big dogs in Washington who are developing our public policies so that we can benefit from the smarts in Silicon Valley. I think that Washington can benefit from a good dose of Silicon Valley, and so we are trying to build those bridges.
All right, Alec J. Ross, Senior Advisor on Innovation to Secretary Clinton. Great to have your perspective on how the government is using technology around the world. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.